Imponte announces yesterday, but today. It starts with a base model, with a door that makes getting into a sports car feel as simple as push and pull. It starts with an interior which features rear seats no one would ever use. It starts with moving, like it was designed to, on a wheelbase now smaller than a football field. It starts with the Turbo V8. It starts with non-functioning hood scoops when you order the scooped hood, or a non-functioning bulge when you buy the performance hood. An Imponte styling you can find from the bed of any tow truck. This is yesterday, but it's tomorrow, today, by Imponte. Nightshade. One word, 2 syllables, and 8 cylinders of carbureted, unregulated, and unadulterated American hubris. In what was to be the final days of the muscle car craze, the American automobile industry had been at war with itself on all fronts. The focus gradually shifted from larger fins to larger engines, and the space race aesthetic had given way for a competition purely in engine size, crayon colors, and vinyl stripes. Everything from mid-sized sedans, luxury cars, and pony cars were caught in the cycle of being grossly underpowered by the next model year. It seemed nothing was sacred, and consequences were fickle. At the forefront of the showroom skirmish were none other than Imponte. Wanting their own slice of the fairly new pony car market, they designed a car much more brazen and stylized than its competition, which was available with Imponte's signature V8 turbo engine. Air quotes, but we'll get to that later. This turbo V8 engine was the largest thing Imponte could slot in the engine bay, all while still allowing the hood to close, of course. As such, the Nightshade had an output which was sooner to wrap the car around a pole than it was to impress onlookers, though that never stopped anyone from trying. In the 20th century, when Imponte was competing for the young hearts and minds of the free market, instead of the nostalgia-addicted collectors and barn hoarders of the 21st, Imponte embodied the new and the exciting. The overall form and function of the Nightshade helped solidify the auto industry's departure from the conservative styling of the 1960s, while pushing the envelope on what manufacturers could hide from government regulation and insurance speculation. Unlike the Ellie and the Gauntlet, the Nightshade offered a tremendously different design language. Taking notes from the emerging culture of the time, Imponte looked to break the rules and smooth out the straight-edge profile, in favor of the more expressive cola bottle styling, which was beginning to take a hold of the industry. Flowing lines and curves made the body look continuous and uniform. The aggressively sharp chin spoiler, exaggerated rear tire width and arches, combined with the lack of rear quarter side windows, if you remove the glass and put vents in instead, that's still cheating, were all details that made the Nightshade look the part of a purpose-built sports car. And just like Bravado, Imponte also allowed its customers to mix and match trim to their heart's content. The infamous novelty hoods with scoops, bulges, and the glorified taillight obscuring ducktails were everywhere, and none of these things would ever make your driveway trophy any faster. These, in fact, were the original race-inspired cosmetic enhancements. Oh yes, right from the factory. Ironically, for all its differences, it would share an identical fate to the era it strove to escape. No amount of reconstructive surgery would save the Nightshade from the impending oil crises of the 70s. But the scarcity of oil is hardly the only nail in the Nightshade's coffin. The charade of faux horsepower ratings manufacturers would trick insurance agencies with were beginning to peel like bad wallpaper, revealing engines which were much more potent and much more costly to insure. And let's not even talk about the crash ratings. The bumpers on there are about as effective as bracing for impact in an airplane. It's also worth noting the various government-mandated safety measures and the gradual banning of leaded gasoline. These changes would bulk up the design of cars with proper bumpers, crumple zones, and neutered engines, all of which resulted in safer roadways and cleaner air by the late 70s, which made sense. It wasn't as profitable to harm your customers or their children, or future customers, whatever. This would be far from the end for Imponte. Begrudgingly, they learned how to increase compression ratios, downsize engines, and govern emissions. In fact, much of what was learned from the Nightshade helped produce the Phoenix and its descendant, the Ruiner. America may not have had to reinvent the wheel, but it certainly had to revise the bodies and engines they were bolted to. Oil crisis. Okay, that's enough. Yes, right. So much like the plant, the Nightshade can be deadly in large doses. In fact, if that pedal meets the floor for too long, consider the fact that there aren't airbags, so there's nothing to rebound you from the brick wall you're going to encounter. But I mean, for something as complex as a shopping cart, at least by today's standards, it handled surprisingly well when taken into consideration. The Nightshade also boasts just about enough torque to pull a tree stump out, but it seems to lack a competitive top speed. And let's be honest here, if you're looking to win bets at the drag strip, you've got the wrong decade. You might have enough room for 2 people in the back who don't mind losing circulation to their legs, and the trunk space is all but helpful for storing things. But this is kind of to be expected for what was essentially a small performance car. The interior is nothing less than standard, nor is there anything more, which should surprise no one. Okay, moving on. Oh, yes. Like I said earlier, it has a V8 turbo. But like many deceiving marketing tactics of the industry, you're being conned with a firm handshake and a smile. Instead, you'll find the engine's aspiration to be as natural as they come. Then again, the Nightshade signifies the end of this point in time. The American muscle car, for all intents and purposes, survived the 70s, but paid dearly. These cars can no longer exist. Not logistically, not economically, and certainly not environmentally. Everything that made these cars so rebellious and cool had to be scrapped in order to scrounge up whatever was left of the bottom line. We have market competition with large V8 cars again, but not really. These cars aren't so much fighting each other as they are fighting to stay relevant in the world around them. Ultimately, the Nightshade is a 30-something adult that will never escape their adolescence, blaming their abruptly short childhood in the world around them, making consecutively poor lifestyle choices in an attempt to live at what they've lost, only to realize that their midlife crisis occurred 2 decades early. The Nightshade will remain an important parent figure though, as its kin will do everything they can not to repeat their father's mistakes.